Hey guys, and welcome to another What's for Dinner. I'm Savannah and this is Grits and Gratitude. So on Sunday we had kind of like an appetizer dinner. So the first thing I did was I took a pack of Little Smokies and put some barbecue sauce, and I just put those on the stove on low, and then I started prepping my jalapenos for some jalapeno poppers. So I just sliced the jalapenos in half and then scooped out all the ribs and the seeds, and I did that with all of the peppers, and I just discarded the seeds and the ribs. And in another bowl I am just mixing some whipped cream cheese, some shredded cheese, and some ranch seasoning and garlic powder. This is going to go inside of our peppers, and we're going to wrap them in bacon. So I'm just taking a few slices of bacon and cutting them in half, and then I'm going to take that cheese mixture, put it inside of the pepper, and wrap the peppers with the bacon and put them on a cookie sheet that had a Silpat on it. If you do not have a Silpat, you can just spray your cookie sheet or put some tinfoil down, whatever you want to do. But I stuffed every pepper with the cheese, wrapped it with the bacon, and this is what they look like before they went into the oven. And these just went into the oven on 400 for about 25 minutes. While those were baking, I just got my chicken wings ready. So I just am putting some chicken wings into a bowl. These are the kind that are already like detached as far as like the little drumette and all that jazz. But I just tossed them with some olive oil and some seasoning salt, and these are going to go in the air fryer. I did for 20 minutes and I flipped them halfway through. And this is our plate when we got everything finished up. So we have a few of the jalapeno poppers, some wings, and the Little Smokies. And this was a really good dinner. This is one of our favorite things to have here and there, just like a little appetizer night. It's really fun, it's easy, and it's always really good. So the jalapeno poppers were probably the star of this dish, so if you haven't tried making those, you definitely need to, and they're not crazy spicy, so if you're worried about that, don't, because if you let the pepper cook long enough, they're good. But on Monday, we had some French bread pizzas, well actually Italian bread pizzas, because the French bread is really long and the Italian bread wasn't quite as long, so I just got that. So I just cut the piece of bread in half and I just spread some pizza sauce on either side, and then I sprinkled a little bit of garlic powder, and then I topped them with some shredded mozzarella cheese, and then I went back and put some pepperonis on there, and then again I topped it with a little bit more cheese and some Parmesan cheese, and baked them at 350 for about 10 minutes. And this came together in like 5 minutes. It was not hard to make at all. But this is what it looked like when it came out of the oven. And I just served this with a Caesar salad kit, just the little like Dole Caesar salad kits you can get at Walmart or wherever. I got mine at Lidl. But this was dinner, and we had plenty of leftovers, and it was really good and really easy. So really good for a Monday, because Monday is the day I struggle the most with wanting to come home and cook dinner. Eric didn't want any salad, so he got 2 pieces of pizza, but I had my 1 piece and the salad, and it was great. On Tuesday night, I made some sliders on some pretzel buns and some homemade potato wedges. This was the first time I made potato wedges, so I just washed and cut 2 russet potatoes, and then I tossed them in some olive oil and seasoning salt, and then I tried to lay those out in one single layer in my air fryer. And while they were cooking, I started patting out my hamburgers. So I just made 1 pound into 6 little patties. So I'm just patting those out and seasoning each side with some salt and pepper. And I'm just going to cook those on my griddle, just because I find that it's easier to drain the grease into the little hole on the griddle versus just letting it cook in the grease in a pan. So I just like cooking burgers on my little griddle. And I got this griddle Black Friday like 2 years ago for $10. And it's been great. But that's what I'm talking about, just getting all the excess grease and putting it down in there so they're not just sitting in grease the whole time they're cooking. But after the burgers were fully cooked, I took half a slice of cheddar cheese and topped each burger with that. And this is what our plates looked like when they were done. I used the little Pretzilla pretzel buns. We had those at work, so I decided to give them a try, and they were wonderful. I just have a little bit of mustard and a pickle on mine, and then Eric just has the meat and cheese on his. But these were really good. Those buns were great. I would buy them again, so if you see those in the store, pick them up. They are so good. On Wednesday, we had this Cajun sausage and rice. I got this recipe, I think, from the website Budget Bites. I will leave the recipe linked down below, but the first thing I did was cut up some kielbasa. I think you can use kielbasa or andouille sausage, whatever you can find, but I just sliced that up, and then I diced up a green bell pepper. A lot of people just throw away the top and the bottom of the pepper, but those are totally okay to chop up as long as you get the ribs and the center and the seeds and all out. You can definitely use the little ring that comes from the top and the bottom to chop up. But in my Dutch oven, I am just putting a little bit of olive oil, and I'm adding my sausage, and I'm going to just cook that until it starts to brown, and then I'm going to add in the bell pepper, and I'm going to cook that for about 2 minutes until it starts to soften, and then I'm going to add in my spices just to let them toast, and then I'm going to go in with 1 can of fire roasted diced tomatoes and 1.5 cups of chicken broth. I don't buy broth, so I just use water and a little bit of broth base. And then I'm going to add in the rice, and I'm going to let it come up to a boil. And then I'm going to put the temperature down on low, cover it, and let it go for 20 minutes. After it cooks for 20 minutes, I let it sit for 5 minutes, and then I fluffed up the rice. And this is what it looked like in the pan. And this is what our plates look like. This was so easy and so good. The leftovers were just as good. I brought some to my best friend at work the next day, but we really enjoyed this. It was really good. I would make it again. I think you could do it with brown rice and it would turn out perfect. You would probably just have to add a little more chicken broth, but either way, so whether you have brown rice or white rice, it's a great recipe, and it's cheap, easy, and delicious. So definitely going to go on our dinner rotation because it was that good. On Thursday, I made some potato soup. So I just have 4 potatoes that I have peeled and diced, and those are going on the stove to boil. The original recipe said to bake them, but I didn't have time for that, so I just put them in a pot to boil. And I am just chopping up some bacon. The recipe called for like 12 slices, but I only had like 5 or 6, and it worked out fine. So in my Dutch oven, I am just cooking that bacon until it starts to get crispy, and then we are going to remove it to a paper towel lined plate, and we're just going to set that aside. And to that bacon grease, we're going to add some flour and just whisk that around to make a roux. And after it cooks for a minute or so, we're going to add in 2 cups of water. I'm going to add some broth base to this, so you could just use chicken broth or you could use all milk. The reason I used the chicken broth was because all I had was like heavy cream and half, and I didn't want to have that heavy of a base, so I just did part chicken broth and then the heavy cream. And then I'm just going to season this with some salt and pepper, and we're just going to let it cook until it starts to come up to a boil and it becomes pretty thick. After it gets thickened, we are going to drain our potatoes once they become tender, and we're going to add that into the pot. If you followed the recipe the way it was written online, you would be scooping the inside of your baked potatoes out into the soup and then smashing them up a little bit. But I'm just taking my potato masher just to really try to break up some of those really big pieces of potatoes. And then I'm adding some shredded cheese and some bacon, the bacon that we cooked earlier. And then I'm going to season it again with some salt and pepper. And I'm adding a little bit of sour cream just because I had some in the fridge that I needed to use up. The recipe didn't call for that. Well, it said you could garnish it with that, but I don't really like sour cream, so I just mixed it into the soup, and that was that. And then I put a little bit of garlic powder, onion powder, and some thyme. The recipe did not call for thyme, but for some reason I just love the flavor that thyme gives to any kind of potato soup or chowder. And this is what the soup looked like when it was done. It is thick and luscious, and it was so good. And when I went to serve it, I just topped it with some extra cheese and some more bacon, and I sprinkled it with some dried chives. This would have been really good with some fresh green onions chopped up on top, but I didn't have any, so the chives worked. And the leftovers of this were just as good. However, when you do reheat it, it gets really thick. So I recommend reheating it on the stove and adding in a splash of milk. And on Friday, we ordered pizza from Papa John's, and long story short, they brought us the wrong order, so they called, and then they brought us the right order, so now we have so much pizza that we don't even know what to do with it. But anyways, that's all I have for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. I would really love to have you here, and I am grateful for each and every one of you. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.